1, 2, here I go. Chakoma fusia dako chagada. Chakoma fusia dako chagada. Zofuta kumbili iwe. Zofuta kumbili iwe. Zofuta kumbili. Zofuta kumbili. Zofuta, 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 yeah. Yelelelelelelelele, oh. Yelelelelelelelele, oh. Yelelelelelelelele, oh. Yelelelelelelelele, oh. Chakoma fusia dako chagada, yeah. Ichi chakoma fusia dako chagada. Zofuta kumbili, zofuta kumbili, zofuta, 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 yeah. Yelelelelelelelele, oh. Yelelelelelelelele, oh. Yelelelelelelele, oh. Yelelelelelelele, oh. 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 Yeah. Man.
Alrighty.
I'm so glad to be back here with both of y'all. This is Music Meditation Medicine with Brother Masauko Chipembere.
Peace, peace.
Seeing us after quite a journey back to Pasadena from Costa Rica. Our Malawian brother, Pasadena brother, man, and Kevin Sandbloom right there. We've known how many years, the three of us now?
23 of us, somebody probably be over 80. You can add up like 80 years.
Say like.
Yeah.
Some gray hairs
cool,
going down.
Getting on like 30
That almost
years,
qualifies a legacy.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
So, and a musical one. So we're just here to say what's up to Masauko before he heads back to Costa Rica. And what this experience this year, after all the craziness going on around the world, all the COVID and the sickness and war and negativity, you know, like you're out there doing your music, like moving around, spreading a message of kind of like love and unity. So being someone who basically came to this country, to this town right here as a kind of a refugee from Africa, from Malawi, and political one. What does the music mean to you in that context? Is there anything you can share about like how the music for you has been the medicine to deal with all this stuff?
Absolutely. Well, the beautiful thing about Pasadena is that Pasadena is it's a, how do I put it? The whole world often lives in Pasadena, right? So growing up in Pasadena, I grew up down the street from Kevin Sandbloom and Longtime, who are two of the premier jazz artists from South Africa. Their son went to my mother's daycare.
Wow.
Kevin Sandbloom was the guy who produced Roots with Quincy Jones, and Longtime sang on the Roots album. When I say Roots, I mean the movie Roots. They sang on.
Okay.
Yeah, in
Not the hip-hop group.
1977, they sang on. He produced, Kevin Sandbloom produced and wrote a lot of the stuff with Quincy Jones for that soundtrack, and then also he, his wife sang on there and was also someone who sang and wrote for Mary McKebba. Both of them did, and so they lived up the street from me in Pasadena. They lived on Altadena Drive, not too far from here, and so they were in exile there, right? Crazy. And so because they were in exile there, I was exposed to like Southern African music at a very young age.
Wow.
And he was already about protest songs and songs of love. And that kind of was my first influence here in Pasadena.
Amazing.
Yeah. And he ended up kind of being
especially since you were born in Malawi.
No, I wasn't. I was born here.
Oh, yeah, you were born here.
I was born in UCLA Medical Center.
So, and that was, how many years after your mother was here?
She got here pregnant with me. I was born the year she got here. She was pregnant with me when she arrived.
So that's right on the... Yeah.
Conceived in Tanzania, born in Los Angeles.
So you're Malawi American official. Yeah. Officially.
Really, for real. Absolutely. All kinds of...
Yeah, and it's so cool that we can hang with Kevin, like musicians who've known each other for so long, even though our paths aren't always, crossing whatever, but that musicians from Pasadena can keep on doing their thing,
Yep.
Keep on making positive music.
I mean, we have a lot of history being in the first bands we were in, basically.
Word.
Yeah. It was like 2 or 3 bands that were just like,
the congregation.
just a circle of musicians that all kind of like, were in one band, broke up, formed another 2 or 3 bands, but we all ended up like playing together for, years and years.
Yeah.
But the thing too is, I give us credit because I feel like as a collective of artists and musicians, we were super diverse in what we were into. I met you guys at like 14, 15. People are already into like Sly and the Family Stone and like
Johnny Hathaway and whatnot.
Johnny Hathaway and like Toots and the Maytals and like the concept, Charlie Parker. Like there's a lot of things these young dudes were thinking about that I thought was really cool, coming from where I came from, which is more of a private school background where there wasn't as much of in my house there was a lot of musical diversity because my brothers and sisters and stuff, my older brothers and sisters, but in my school, no. And like when I got to these other cats who they went to public school, and I was going to private school. So when I got to the cats from public school, Muir, Blair, all these dudes had broad minds for music, whereas private school was more like rock and new wave oriented. These guys were like all of it, all of it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, so it's cool to think about this shared past, but I'd like to know from you how music has kind of like inspired you to do and to really make things happen, like what happened last night when the UN gathering here in Pasadena, like really bring people together around shit that really matters. And that doesn't happen automatically with music,
No. But think about it. Go back to what I said in the beginning. The guy up the street was Kevin Sandbloom, and Kevin Sandbloom wrote this song. I remember being like 9, 10 years old, and he had this song called "They Like to Play With Fire," and he was like, "They like to play with fire, make believe it's water, Oh no, don't they know fire will burn them? And he was writing this to the apartheid government.
Yeah.
You know? So I was hearing that from age like 9, 10 years old. He bought me my first record player. He always reminds me that. You don't remember I bought you your first record player? So I think that from the beginning, even when I go back to the songs that I know I was writing, like as soon as I got into Spam Acid and all these early groups, there was always like this message thing that was kind of there and going to be there. It got solidified by going to Africa and everything, but it also, this is the thing too, everybody's very interested in like what came from that way this way. But what they're not getting is a lot went from this way that way. Because like coming from here where I went to, people were like, whoa, you know a lot. You know what I mean? About a lot of different things and how it all comes together. Because I think, if I gotta say one thing, man, like living in America is hard as hell because of like racism, sexism, classism, all that stuff. But the diversity of humanity that like sits in a place like LA and the amount of talent and culture that shows up here, like, you know, when I think about you growing up, you know, learning Indian music and going deep into that, not like, you know, you've been with this, as long as I've known you, you've been with this and really searching for it on like a spiritual, cultural, all levels of it, not so fantasy version of it, you know. As long as I've known him, he's been down with the soul music, the funk shit, the jazz shit, like the whole time, and it's like that.
Otherwise, how's the music gonna be deep? You know, how's it gonna be touch people really?
See, that thing of it being deep. That's like it's a Pasadena thing. Not everybody feels like that about music. Not everybody feels like you got to go to the root of the thing. Not at all. I think that's a Pasadena thing, and it took me out of here in a consciousness that privileged me everywhere I went. Because I went, whatever we're trying to do, we're trying to go to the root of the thing. I might see this kid doing it in front of me, but where did he learn from, and what did he get? So like I was in South Africa. And I found myself with people my age and younger, often teaching them certain aspects of their own literature and history of their literature, because when I got there, my head immediately went, okay, well, knowing how breakbeat music worked in the late 70s, in the early 70s and late 60s, right? That was a very aggressive and rebellious time in the States, right? So what that always does is inspire rebellious and like... more revolutionary music everywhere else. So like you'll get into these sounds in Zambia, all these other places, you can find the parallel to your Sly Stone, the parallel to your Miles Davis, the parallel, every place produced something to talk back to that center that was pushing that out there. So you go to that place and there's literature that kind of comes with that. There's like, it's almost like there's a black arts movement everywhere because there was one in the States. And so if you go looking for the stuff that sits in that era, whether it's literature or music from like 60 to like 74, like there's mad deep poetry in South Africa that's just, you know, black and jazzy and very unique and a lot like Amiri Baraka, and it's their version of something that parallels that. And then so, but if you're caught in the present, it's like you don't find out that existed because you're just caught in this mindset of the present. We were always taught, I worked at Pooh Bah Records. Like what I did there was sit there and go, oh, what is Abdullah Ibrahim? Like, so I arrived.
Pooh Bah Records was like my church when I was a kid. I used to walk sometimes, just like, I got to get down there by $9.
I'm sure I've seen you. I used to see you in there.
Like 2 or 3 used albums.
Bro, I worked in there, and that...
I think I remember that.
Yeah, I was the first black dude to ever... If you want a Pasadena, like, distinction that only Pasadena people will get, I was the first black dude ever to work at Pooh Bah Records.
Oh, that's funny.
You know? And for me... Like, that's a crazy distinction because after me, I probably gave the job to Akil.
Oh, right.
Right? After Akil passed it on to Dame Funk.
Right.
Okay? Damon passed it on to Ross G.
Ross G, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So
that same job?
Yeah, so the Pooh Bah dudes, if you think about it, you got Damon, who's his own kind of legend. Ross G, who's his own kind of legend. I got my own thing going on. Akil got his own thing going on. So every single person that came through that seat, it's like that's a seat kind of, it's like being in a spaceship, man. That shit just shifted you into another gear. Because all of a sudden, the owner of Pooh Bah
That was a real magical store for me.
Oh man,
I was so into it.
You remember the owner of Puba was tight with Sun Ra. So Jay was like, you know, what's weird is I remember working there as a kid and going, man, Jay's like this old dude, and he's like really cool, and he's a radio DJ who plays jazz, and all he's into is like Sun Ra and Burning Spear. That's it. It's like all he's messing with. And I'm like, what's that about? What's that about? About 25 years later in my life, I'm like, man, all I'm into, Sun Ra, Burning Spear. And I come on, oh God, I turn into my boss at Puba.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Because those things are deep, man.
Yeah.
Sun Ra and Burning Spear, that's as deep as you go with it, you know. In terms of the reggae, that's as rootsy as you're ever going to get with it. You feel Africa in it. Sun Ra is the same. You feel the depth of Africa in it. So I'm saying that the depth, looking for that soul, that started here. And then I was able to utilize it incredibly well in Africa because so much of what you can gain anywhere is your taste going into the place.
Yeah.
That's what you have to offer. Kind of, yeah.
Often. And it often surprises people what, you know, when you come from a place and have very strong opinions. They're like, oh. But I'm like, if you like what I do, you're never going to get anything from what I do unless you understand my strong opinions. Especially things like my recordings. It's like, you know, we're in Pasadena. I'm looking around in your room and I'm like, you got a California blonde. You've got certain gear here that already says you're from Pasadena. That amp says you're from Pasadena.
Oh, definitely.
It's a certain taste that people like. I have one. You had one at some point, I'm sure.
I've had 2 of them.
Yeah, it's a certain sound. It works.
Well, I actually had your old Fender Bassman for a while.
Right. I remember that.
You know.
So all those things are taste things, and they matter. So like when I arrived in Africa, most people are using awful amps. It's a lot of really terrible amps. It's a mind-blowing playing. I'm not talking about musicianship. The musicianship is through every scene you can ever imagine. But they're playing through amps and stuff where you're like, oh, that part of it, you know, the part that makes you own that particular deluxe, that part doesn't transfer.
Yeah.
You know? And I think when we get one of my jobs and ideas as a musician and a production mind is to eventually be one of the people that helps go, hey, what if we, instead of having that old, like, what do you call it, those old damn Roland amps, the twin chorus amp? Instead of that twin chorus, right? Like, let's put like 2 of these Fenders up and put them in stereo instead and see what that does. Like, what happens to the whole quality of the music in Africa when all of a sudden, let's think about this like
same I imagine in Cuba and Haiti and so many of these countries where, you know, they play the shit out of the music on broken down instruments and stuff that schools would be giving away here, you know. Like, and they can make so much music though. Yeah, I'm not even worried about your instrument. My concept is, can I record it with the sort of mastery that something like Steely Dan would be recorded with? Mm-hmm. You know, and that's the question all the time over there. It's like, what happens when you start recording this music that's just on some bananas level in terms of like the jazz fusions I hear, even in Malawi, the way that they take jazz into the rhythms of the village and where that goes to is something. I'm like, this could be I'm like, the world is okay for the next 200 years, because when this finally arrives in like 30 years, everyone's going to go, oh, whoever made that's the new Mozart or the new Beethoven or whatever. I mean, it's just, it's not recorded well and it's not coming this way. Yeah. But definitely, it's like there's a whole lane of bizarre. Well, I love that you could be the person who could change that, you know, like at least in some way, like bring, you know, certain artists and certain sounds that, you know, most of the world hasn't been exposed to. I hope to be involved in it. There's a lot of dudes now, because they have access to information, there's more guys starting to get it, that there's a sonic genius necessary, not only a musical genius. You got to see the picture of music and frame it. Yeah. You know, it's coming, you know. And that also has to do with spirituality, you know. To be dead honest, when the music comes at you technically balanced in a way where you can lose yourself in it because all the sounds are blending just perfectly, all of a sudden that technology and that the advanced use of that technology has opened the door to a more powerful spiritual experience. Of course. Yeah, it's just like removing all the possible obstacles, so that you can totally be in the flow and know.
Mm-hmm. I heard I'm gonna forget this producer's name, but he called them distractions. He's like when he's talking about listening to music on a very high level as a mixing engineer and talking about when it's right. And he said, when it's right is when I hear no distractions.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's a way to think about it. You know what I mean? Yeah. You can zone out to it and nothing pulls you off of the zone. You know what I mean? And it takes a lot to make that happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. Especially for the guys on our level now. Because we've been doing this so long that it's like,
I mean, that's kind of how I mix, or when I'm producing my own stuff. Like, I'm just, can I listen through it without hitting that bump in the middle of, that point in the song where we're like,
something's wrong here.
Yeah.
But man, there's so much to learn on that level. Like right now, what I'm finding is my dream is to be able to believe myself when I mix. I don't yet. Like every other part of the aspect of it, I believe. And a lot of that's coming from Russell. It's like coming from someone who really did that. I feel very much like, man.
It's a whole nother kind of training, I realized.
It is,
to understand. I was like, oh shit, this is it. But how about, but before we get too crazy, how about, can we finish with another little riff, some little song, or just an improvisation?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do it.
My styles is relevant, son of the melanin on the melodious mission beyond religion and vision, a world without want. Put it together with hard work and pure thoughts. I know the hungry soul like the lines on my palm. I walk strong in the city, never done with my songs because the government is trying to govern my mental. My lyrics beyond masonry, they turn to dental. The drum I come from's the one you run from. Succumb one beat one, the black rocker actor. Put the X in the Malcolm factor. Spit what's next, the MC subtractor. Got the text for Babylon's disaster. Nkosi, Ngotando, Nkosi, Ngobele, Nkosi, Ngotando, Nkosi, Ngobele. to fulfill my spiritual form, material wealth I needed to buy, yeah. I took a bath in bass, let earth rhythms take my spirit to a higher place. I seen Joburg, New York, LA, oh what a ride where it is. Too many getting trapped by the cheese they chase. I love God, son, it's scientific Einstein, throwing energy out, it comes back to mine, and that's fine when the wings of my words combine to emit some black sunshine. Kosi, Otando, Kosi, Gobele, Kosi, Otando, Kosi, Gobele.
Masauko, man.
Good to see you, Paul.
Good tidings.
Good jam, under the
Peace
weather.
and love.
Yeah.
What a
Sandbloom in the
beautiful
house,
way to
taking it all the way
to
back
end
to
your-
Pasadena,
end your current journey.
1984.
Thank
Talk
you,
about-
Kevin.
Right. Yeah.
Wait, talking about, wait,
Thank
let
you,
me
guys.
see. There's no denying,
Yeah,
feel
it's in
like
there.
dying. What?
Since you're gone, I won't be the same. Boom, 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 boom.
I don't remember the rest of it. I remember them joints, man. I remember them joints. Whooping Pasadena, baby.
That's in the Wayback Machine right
Yeah, I'm going back to the top of it.
there. Right.
That was the first time I ever heard.
I got to keep on moving.
Word. That was the first time I heard you sing, man. I'm
Wow.
like, who's this dude? This dude kind of knows what he's doing. What's going on out here?
That's awesome.
How come these public school dudes know how to play music? Man, these dudes influenced me, and I
It was in,
left
it's
private
in the
school,
water,
man.
Holmes.
Yeah.
Damn.
Basically.
It's
Yeah.
the fucking water.
Something. It's weird though because like, I mean, I know now, like looking back on the,
Uh-oh.
looking back on. Oh, I was just gonna say, looking back on the atmosphere, right, of the time, like everybody was in a band, right? There were like 5 bands, and like everybody, there was just this whole. It was a scene, right?
Yeah.
It was
So
it
that was the
officially
same time
a
as the
scene.
Bed Shredders, right?
It was
Yeah.
the Bed Shredders. It was like Rubber Band, which
Yeah.
the Moore
Yeah.
Brothers. It was it was
Everything
Spam
was
it was
Spam
Nonsense,
Acid,
Spam Acid,
Acid.
and Congregation, and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. Whatever. All those bands. So like, but I know now that was like a special thing. That was a special thing because nobody else has it. I mean, I see other kids that are like trying to play music, and I'm like, where's the band? Where's the crew? Like, what do you it's just like they're alone in their room playing some songs. It's just like.
And
Kind of
all
just
of these
did-
dudes
Kind of
challenged me, man.
pathetic.
Yeah.
All of these dudes challenged me. Like, you challenged me. Everybody challenged me because it was like I could look over and the way he was writing a song, it was like, man, he's really not gonna let it be that typical like 1-part song. It's gonna have this whole.
And I was
journey.
looking at Pete.
Yeah,
Pete was looking
doing
at.
it.
We're all
Yeah.
like, kind of looking at each other, like
Yeah.
trying to raise the
Yeah.
bar.
Yeah,
Awesome.
definitely. I remember going when I went to Northridge, like 1988, and I remember coming back, and I'd been in the jazz department at Northridge, and I came back, and Pete played me something. And I think Pete do sometimes where he like play you some shit, and you'd be like, "Whoa, what's that?" And you'd like look over there, and you kind of like turn the guitar for me, like,
Right.
"Nah, you can't see what I'm doing right here." I remember being like, it was the first time I came back from Northridge. I started playing something with him to him, started throwing those 13ths and shit in there. Pete looked over like, it was the first time I ever went,
Yeah.
"Nah."
Right.
That's
Well,
funny.
definitely, we were like growing, learning
That's
from each other.
hilarious.
But definitely, he was the
Right
maestro
on.
at that time. Damon was doing his own thing, always
Right.
something
Right.
super creative and interesting.
Yeah, at that time I was playing with Damon Moldavan. He was playing with you guys.
Damon Moldavan.
I was
Yeah.
playing with him with another bass player. But we didn't like play at the espresso bar. We played at some weird like
You were an Eagle
acid
Rock or somewhere,
parties.
huh?
Weird Arab acid party. No,
That's
I'm
dope.
just kidding.
That's dope, though, man. That shit's
No,
dope.
we were just at some other,
Yeah, I think definitely
But-
for me, like
I know he was playing with you guys.
yeah. But for me, like
Drums.
you when there was a broadening at some point for me, like of like what was possible, and I think it was like probably even in going to Africa and stuff, and then it made it kind of because I was definitely like in the soul, funk, jazz thing. That was my world for a while, and then but I always loved African music and always loved reggae and all that kind of stuff. But going to Africa made me like I could like all the African music, and that made me even more open to things like Indian music for sure. It's like, oh, okay, I get what this is. It's totally out the frame. It's another way of thinking altogether. Yeah. But Africa made me think there's 4,000 different ways of thinking about music, whole culture. So
totally.
All right, man.
Thank you.
Love.
All right, this is Music Meditation Medicine over and out. See you
out later.
in what's next year? 2023.
23.